Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Gerber, denominational minister for youth and young adults for Mennonite Church USA, and also the editor of The Gathering Place, which you can find at www.thegatheringplace.us. And every month here on The Gathering Place, we focus on a new theme, and everything that we do hinges around that theme. This month, we're talking about equipping and empowering volunteers. What does it mean to create strong ministry-based volunteer teams? And so on this podcast today, I am so excited to have Mark DeVries with us to talk with us about how do we do this. And so welcome, Mark, to The Gathering Place. Thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be back.
Good. Yeah, Mark was actually you were on our very first, as we launched last year, as we talked about your book, Sustainable Youth Ministry, which
nice.
which I still feel like is one of my absolute favorite books that I feel like every youth leader needs to read.
Here, I mean, you just keep it with you.
I do, in my back pocket all the time. I'm like, what does Mark say?
The Bible and Sustainable Youth Ministry. I love that about you. So
yeah. Well, one reason why I wanted to bring you back for this month specifically was one of the chapters in this book. Chapter 10 is about architecting the constellation, which is what you title it, from camp counselor to sustainable leader, and how you talk about how can we as youth leaders create durable volunteer ministry teams. And so I'm just wondering if you could just kind of jump in and tell us a little bit, what do you mean by that, as well as some practical advice to youth pastors that are right now. This is February, and you say you need to start 6 months in advance of trying to recruit volunteers and stuff. So what can you tell us about volunteer teams and how
you create those?
There are
kind of two stages that we can think about volunteers in. The first stage is the recruiting stage. A lot of people get tripped up on the recruiting stage, and to use a nice sports analogy, it's like we start the game before we have a team. Is that the youth pastor, youth director, or the point volunteer, that person ends up trying to be the quarterback and the receiver and the blocker all at the same time, and it almost never works. And so let's talk just a little bit about recruiting, and then we can talk a little bit about training. Does that feel good?
Sure. Yeah. Love it. Mm-hmm.
So the biggest challenge about recruiting is that most, especially people new to youth ministry, they get into youth ministry because they want to do the work. They like to be with kids. They like to teach the class. They like to lead the programs. They may even like to make the van reservations and prepare the food. And the truth is, there's just a very limited amount of work that any one human can do. Miss that. And then what we do is we go to a seminar, read a book or a class, or some person says to us, listen, you need to delegate more. And I delegate to, and so we farm out these little tasks to random people. And those are people who are helpers and not partners. That's a huge distinction. A helper is somebody that is waiting for us to take the initiative to give them something to do. Somebody who owns load-bearing work in the ministry. And unfortunately, most youth workers, I was with a youth worker this week in her role for 8 years, and her model is like most churches. It is the genius and a million helpers. These helpers are waiting for a phone call, a text, an email. And when you've got to call or text or email somebody the night before you need something, do it yourself. And so a helper tends to say on the way out the door, hey, call me if you need me. Every ministry needs helpers. You need a list of people who can cook meals. You need a list of people who can drive. It's important to have helpers, but you'll never build a sustainable team. Partners are much more annoying because they own, so they have opinions about the way things happen. And, I certainly had Sunday school partners that when I tried to change the schedule or change the format or change, very agitated and express themselves, right? And it's that Proverbs 14:4 principle that we may have talked about before. When the stable is empty, the manger is clean.
Yeah.
Have
Right.
a large ox, you're
Yep.
going to get a larger harvest. You're going to have a much messier ministry with partner volunteers, but you're going to have an exponentially larger harvest. So we'll talk about the specifics of recruiting, but let me just take a pause there and see how we're doing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think even if we back up, you mentioned something in the beginning of the chapter about camp counselor, and it's like we tend to try to get volunteers that are just like hang out with the kids, but what does it also mean to create sort of a larger vision for our volunteers in whatever capacity that they're working in?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think part of the way we do that, we'll bounce back and forth between recruiting and training. On the training side, I know it feels like a huge sort of hassle, and nobody got into youth ministry to write job descriptions.
Yeah.
But we've got to have clarity about what we're asking these people to do. And when I say job description, I'm thinking could be 4 or 5 bullet points. Now, a lot of times when people volunteer for something different than we're asking for, and it takes a little while to settle in. But a lot of times, because our recruiting efforts are more like abandonment than training, right? We just say, go do it. And then a year later, we're really unhappy with them. It's smart to just build in regular check-ins, particularly in the first a month before they're to begin. And then a week later, you have another check-in. A week later, you have another check-in. It's going to take 3 or 4 conversations, even with people who say they've got it and you think they've got it. Now, the truth is, everyone we recruit is going to do different than the job description. And so, gosh, sorry, this is the only job we have and we don't need you. Or we say, okay, why don't you do this 2/3 of the job and I'll find somebody else to do the other third. Just getting clarity about what it is that they want to do.
Yeah.
Back into recruiting, or do you have a thought before I go there?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, let's talk about recruiting. What you were saying about, training, motivating.
You heard me say, I'll bet you $100 the process that we have for you, recruiting, that you'll have all the volunteers you need. At different conferences and things, I'll bet it's over 25,000 people that I have made this bet with. I've never had to pay $100. The person who sent me an email saying, I was about to send you the email telling you that I hadn't gotten all my volunteers left, and so you don't have to pay the $100. That was
lucky you.
But the truth is, the process for recruiting volunteers just works. The problem is we don't work the process. People and try to call them at inconvenient times and catch them in the parking lot or catch them in the hall. If we'll just work this very simple process I'm going to lay out for you, and in fact, it's in the book we've done called Building Your Volunteer Team. And what we've actually done is it created like a 30-day boot camp that you can get all your volunteers in place in 30 days. You can also do it, generally, if you don't want to get a hernia, just do it in 6 months. It works just fine. So let me just lay it out for you real quick. You start by saying, I'm going to commit 2 hours a week for the next getting my volunteers in place.
You broke up right there. You said I was going to repeat that sentence again.
You're gonna say, I'm gonna commit 2 hours a week to get my volunteer team in place.
Okay.
Now, that really is a much more expensive investment on year one than it will be in subsequent years. Because once you get your volunteers in place for the first time and you're equipping, training, supporting, celebrating, encouraging them, they're going to stay around. About 80% of them will stay around. And you're going to have to do about 20% of what you do in the first year because you're just replacing the people that roll out. And most people want to stay because they're having a great experience. So, but for this first year, so commit that 2 hours a week, which is about 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, right? Not too bad. If I did the math right, maybe 23.7 repeating, but you get the idea. So first you commit the time. You start in February, beginning pieces. You're going to spend 2 hours a week. The first thing you do, I'm just going to give you a series of documents you create. The first document you create is what are all the positions that you need for your team. So if you're a football coach, I need a tight end, I need some tackles, I need some guards, I need a nose guard, I need a center, right? I need a quarterback. You figure out what positions you need and just put blanks next to all those. I need 3 Sunday school teachers, I need a middle school small group leader, I need a ski trip event coordinator, whatever it is. Just build your list. And this whole list is partner volunteers. You're not worrying about your helpers right now. So this is people that will carry a load. An event coordinator, they are going to be the person that makes sure all the details are in place for the event. We're going to meet with them to make sure it's all happening, but they're going to run that thing. So you made your list. That's document 1. Step number 2 is you're going to create a pool of names. We generally say you want that list of names, that pool, to be 3 times larger than your list of needs. So if you've got 20 on your needs list, you got to have a list of 60 over here. Now, a lot of people say to me, oh, gee, 60 people. Well, then you go about the process of sourcing. Talk to your pastor, talk to the kids, talk to your colleagues at church, talk to people who do know people until you get that list to 3 times as large as your needs list. Sometimes that can take 8 to 10 hours to get your list right. But if you do, it's just going to save you immense time. So that's document number 2. On document number 2, you're going to rank these people. Rachel Gerber, she's an A. I'm going to give her an A. Now there's A, B, or C, right? A is awesome. B is, that'd be pretty good. And C is only in a pinch. So we're going to rank them A, B, or C in the left column. And then the right column, we're going to rank them W, E, or B. Now, W is with kids, B is behind the scenes, and E is either one, right? So I would say, okay, Rachel is an A in this column, and she's an E in this column. She could run an event, and she could lead a small group. And an E.
Awesome.
The encouragement, yeah. So once you've got that rank, then you're going to place document 1 next to document 2. Pool next to your needs list. Put a name in every one of those slots. So if I'm looking for my 7th grade girls, I'm going to say, let me put Rachel's name there. Well, and I'll go, oh, you know what? Rachel actually would be better down here. But before you're making any phone calls, you're you're filling your roster. My A team. These are the people I really want, right?
Yeah. Which I think is important because you don't want to inadvertently ask somebody off. You know what I mean? Be like, I've got a cookout coming up here next month. I'm going to ask this person because I know she's great. She's going to say yes, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh man, I really have something bigger and more. I don't know. It's like you're more organized. Yeah.
You just don't want to use somebody who could, manage your whole, your youth group meal program or manage a mission trip and have them use them up by saying, will you drive for this event and bring cookies for this thing? And the truth is you'll always go after those great for your little jobs. So what happens a lot of times is we use up people on the wrong things.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's a good word. Yeah.
if we create this list, we've got our ideal list. Maybe a month and a half into this by now. At that point, we're going to make our first phone call. Or actually, I suggest an email. So I'm putting together my 7th grade small group team. I think you'd be awesome. Any chance you might be interested? You're not saying, hey, can we go get coffee? I have something mysterious to ask you about. You're not saying, here's the full job description that I'm looking for. Here's the big commitment. And I'm going to be looking for somebody to really make a all you're saying is, you got any interest? Looking for at this point is a no or a maybe. They don't have enough information to say yes. If they say no, spend a meeting to meet with them if they know they can't do it this year. At another time, but it's not for recruiting, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to send that email, and they're going to ignore you. But the beauty of working on that, you hear that? They're going to ignore you. They're not going to respond. Don't freak out and put your bottom lip out. It's just the way it works. It's recruiting predestination. It's just people don't respond. The beauty of working this process every week is that you're going to look and say, oh, did Rachel respond? That bum, she did not respond. I'm going to call her. Then you call her. Hey, it's a voicemail because she knows you're asking for something. Hey, Rachel, I'm working on my 7th grade girls small group. You think you might be interested? Give me a call back. Rachel will ignore you. It's just the way she is. Now, 1 out of 8 very responsible Mennonites will actually respond. But basically, but by the time you do this about 8 times, and when you get a no, just drop their name down to the no column at the bottom of the sheet, and you're going to drop a new name in. So every week you're just working the list. Once they say yes, circle them or put them in Sharpie or something. If you work that process week in and week out, just following up and asking, so many people feel guilty about asking people to work with kids. This is not sales. You're not trying to talk them into anything. It is a rare privilege to get to have friends who are teenagers.
Yeah.
The church, they envy youth workers who have an excuse to actually know kids in a personal way. Talking to are not the people that want to have that kind of experience. Yeah, it's okay. We don't have to feel bad. So our listeners to feel empowered that they are giving people the chance of a lifetime to do something that they'll be thinking about, praying about, that will shape them for the rest of their lives. And they'll love it.
Yeah.
A few volunteers ever say, oh, gee, I wish I hadn't done that when they're done. You're talking.
No, I was just going to say, I think you're touching on something that's so key. And maybe that's just the demise of the professional youth worker, now that we have this, I'm the youth person in my church that's hired, that I get a paycheck. I feel like I'm the one that is solely holding the relationship with the youth, whereas it's really a congregational thing. And what does it mean for us to shift our own image of our own role in ourselves to be like, we are more about how do we spread this vision to the rest of the congregation to be like, these are our people, and let me help. My role then is to help you get involved in their lives.
The Bible, it's funny that you'd say that. The Bible says stuff about that we are ministry to equip the saints for their ministry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So pastors and apostles and teachers, we're equipping saints to do the work of ministry. We're the bureaucrats in the background.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're creating the relationships. So here's a case study. How do you feel if when a kid gets arrested, volunteer instead of you? The answer is you ought to feel great. But most of us will feel like, oh, I must not have done my job. They must not like me. They like the volunteer better. Our job is to get the volunteers out front. So never scores the touchdown.
Yeah.
The team together in the right configuration so that the team can win, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Side of things. Questions about that you want to poke around with?
Oh, I think that's great. No, I mean, yeah, I just think that that's such a key element for us as youth workers to realize that really, I think we've been groomed to think, that our job is working with the kids, but I think really our job is to enable the congregation to catch a vision to see that this is all all of our responsibility and privilege to work. So yeah, do you have anything else to say about the training of these youth ministry teams?
Let me do that real quick because I know we're about to land the jet.
Yeah.
You may have heard me say before, if your primary calling is to work hands-on with kids.
We say that say that one more time, Mark.
If you feel like your primary calling is to work hands-on with kids, here, staff people is to picture, and the truth is we don't have the bandwidth relationally to pour into all the kids that God has given into our care. Create the structure to make that happen. Real quick, if you've been around youth ministry a while, you know that when you plan a training meeting, everybody thinks it's important and almost nobody comes. So this meeting, you have a nice dinner, you do the Mexican food and you're thinking, oh, they're all going to come and I'm going to give you these handouts. And well, the truth is they're complicated and disintegrative and they're being pulled in a million different directions. So we've stumbled onto an approach to training that I'm kind of excited about. You do an orientation at the beginning of the year where you gather people. You do a celebration at the end of the year where you gather people. And throughout the year, you find ways to stay in touch that don't require people to come to a meeting. We have put together, you may have seen this resource, it's called Training to Go, Youth Leader Training to Go, or Training on the Go, or something like that. It's through a group. And we've created these, 24 sessions where we've done like a 3-minute video on a topic connected to youth ministry with an email template the youth worker can send to your team. So, you're my volunteer. Hey, Rachel, dog just quit chewing up your shoes. Story for today, right? And here's what we're talking about today. And listen to this quick video, and then I've got a few questions for you when we're done. So they click it, they listen to the video, they answer questions. The questions take 2 or 3 minutes. So in 10 minutes a month, your leaders can get a little bit of information. And at the bottom of those questions, you can say, don't forget, this month we got the big hayride, and then we launch our small groups on Tuesday. And if you need your curriculum, it's going to be in my office, whatever, right? So you've got a format to keep communicating, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
That's awesome.
At the beginning, you got to have everything in place for that orientation meeting. Job descriptions, your calendar, a directory of all your kids, all of that sort of system stuff, so that they feel empowered. And then at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, it's about systems. At the end of the year, it's about culture and story and narrative. So at the end of the year, we're celebrating. So part of it is the leaders are telling stories of the work of God in the past year. You're celebrating them. We like to give little awards to our leaders, a little certificate of something silly they've done. But that process tends to keep people in the game without giving anybody a hernia. Those are my thoughts about recruiting and training volunteers for today.
That's hilarious. I love it. I think it's so important to not gloss over or forget the celebration aspect. I mean, sometimes I feel like the end of the year, everyone's tired and it's just like, it goes away. And I mean, not to say that people are looking or feeling resentful of like, I didn't get my Starbucks card, but it is such a nice gesture to really thank and show appreciation for all that someone has given and poured into the youth. You know, I think it's just key. It's just key. Yeah. Are you still there, Mark?
Okay, how we doing?
Hey.
I know we're about to land the jet, aren't we?
You're fine, yeah. So finally, I just have a question about any final words you might have for encouragement for that youth pastor, that youth worker that's feeling overwhelmed today. What do you want to say to him or her?
I would say that between Rachel and me, one out of one of us has been where you are. We know about that total feeling of overwhelmed, behind, exhausted, can't get it done. And sometimes we're overwhelmed and exhausted because we deserve it. Ourselves in such a way that we've tended to every squirrely little there. So things like we have time to check our email and look at the latest blogs and all that sort of stuff, but we don't know the names of our kids. Well, we got to do foundation work before we do that other stuff. And the problem is the foundation work takes RAM, right? It takes engagement of our brain. When we get tired and don't want to play, the easiest thing to do is go to email and check it because there we're supposed to work on. Typically what we do when we're tired is we just look at the email and then we're going to have to come back. We're not going to do anything with it, right? So one of the pieces from Sustainable Youth Ministry that we're so, we do it in all of our coaching visits. We want people to have a rhythmic week and making sure there's a 24-hour period where we just turn off from ministry. The other really important piece is a piece we call balcony time, where you've got, if you're just starting out, try an hour. If you're doing it 3 hours a week is where you're really going to start to feel progress and feel like you're getting above the water. Balcony time is when you're working on your life in ministry, not in your life in ministry. And so happy to talk about any of those, explain it. My email address, which you may give, but I'm happy for you or anybody to email me at mark@ministryarchitects.com if there are things you want to follow up and talk about it.
That's awesome. Mark, you are such a gift. Thank you so much for living your life passion out in the church and equipping and empowering generations and generations of people. So we're just so grateful for what you've given and for who you are. So I will definitely leave links that you've talked about, what you've mentioned, your email, links to your books, as well as this training to go with this podcast when we post it. So thanks so much, Mark, for hanging out with the Gathering Place today. And until next time. All right, see ya. Thanks. Bye, everyone.